Hello, good afternoon, and you're very welcome to Liveline. 51551 is our text number. Catherine, good afternoon.
Hi, good afternoon.
It was Friday night.
That's right.
And what happened?
I was at home. I'm living in Skeeton, and I was at home. I was upstairs actually. It was about 20 past 10, and I was lying down upstairs. My husband was away, and my two kids were asleep, and I was just taking advantage of the quiet night.
Mm-hmm.
And next minute, the whole place started rumbling, and I thought my extension was falling down. And when I didn't know what to do really. I could hear a plane. A few minutes later, a plane coming overhead, and it was very low, and the noise of it was just unreal. It was shaking the whole house, and I thought it was going to come through the back window. I didn't want to open the curtain to see it. I said there was no way I was going to get my two kids out in time.
You thought the plane was going to crash onto your house?
I did, yeah, I did. It was so loud. It was unreal. I mean, we've had planes before coming over, but not to the extent the whole place was shaking.
Because you're near Shannon.
Yeah, we wouldn't be far from Shannon now, but it was just unreal. And my front door was locked, and I didn't know where I had put my keys, so I was just basically terrified. I didn't know what to do. And
you would locked yourself into the house?
I had my husband had gone away, and I said to him I was going up to bed, so I said, look, and lock the front door. And of course I didn't know where I had put my keys. I wasn't expecting to be having to run out in a hurry all of a sudden. But by the time I got brave enough to look out the front window, I could see it heading over at the front side of my house, going over the houses, and it was gone a good distance that stage now, and I could see a glow. I didn't even know. It was only afterwards I was told that the engine was on fire in the plane.
Okay, say there, Catherine. 1857-15815. This is Skeeton, County Limerick, near Shannon. Grace, good afternoon.
Hello, Joe. Hi.
You were outside your house. What did you see?
I tell you now, Joe. I don't smoke in my house because I have a new baby, and I was out having a cigarette, and I heard this unmerciful noise.
Around 10:30?
Around about 25 past 10, because I was watching the Late Late Show.
Okay.
And I tell you, it sounded like thunder, and then it sounded like somebody banging off a galvanized roof. And so I was facing the front of my house. So I went to the side of my house. It's a bungalow on my mum's sheep farm, so there's no houses around me. I went around the corner of the house, and I saw a plane coming towards my house really low, nearly hitting off ash trees on my mum's land. And the engine was on fire. So just your quick instinct was, I just tore into my house. I said, get out, there's a plane going to crash.
You thought it was going to crash into your house?
Yeah, I grabbed my baby.
And there was flames coming out of it?
There was flames coming out of it, and the landing gear was down. You see, what happened was, when I saw it, there was low-lying cloud, and it had gone under the clouds, so it was so low that I could see everything. Now, this, to me, was a scene from War of the Worlds kind of thing. And I'm not being dramatic. It's seriously, the first thought was, get my kids out. So I grabbed the baby. The two boys went out the back, and I went out the front. So there was, you know what I mean, panic.
So you evacuated your house?
Oh, I evacuated my house. And my partner was in the sitting room watching soccer, so he didn't even hear me. And I screaming at the top of my voice. Yeah.
But people, but it was such a major incident. It didn't feature in any national newspaper since Friday.
Couldn't.
Sharon is on the line. Sharon, good afternoon. 51551 text. We're talking about Skeeton. Sharon.
Hello, Joe.
You were watching the Late Late Show.
Yes, and we heard thunder, what sounded like thunder, and then
and that wasn't coming from the programme.
Not this time, Joe. We ran out because the thunder was getting louder, and it was very regular, like cracks, extreme level of noise. And my husband called me out. It was he said, "Watch, it's coming down," and we could see flames.
It's coming down, as in crashing.
Crashing. It was coming down. We're on a slight rise. We could see it coming down a bit over bogland and about to crash. And I was stuck to the ground with horror. It was pure. I'm still shaking thinking about it because it was a horror movie just in action.
And was it a passenger plane or a cargo plane? Could you see windows? Could you see people?
I was praying for the people on board for the rest of the night, and then I found out it wasn't until 4 o'clock the following day that we found out that it was a cargo plane, and there was some small snippet of news on the local radio. But that night, I mean, we didn't know what it was. We were just
But there were flames coming out of it.
There were flames coming out on both sides, Joe. Yeah.
So was that on fire, or was he dumping fuel? Because dumping
I think
fuel
he was dumping fuel, yes, because that's the sound. Obviously, that was what was making sound. Now, with a plane of that size, it was dumping an awful lot of fuel, and it had been going on a while because the dogs were barking.
And where did he dump the fuel?
That's the question.
Do you burn up the fuel or dump it?
Do
you physically dump it?
You have to dump it. He came into an emergency landing. Now, the sirens, we didn't hear the sirens going off at Shannon. We normally do. This is what happens, for years, because we're on a flight path. We know, you hear these things over the years. But, no, he seemingly landed. It was a heavy landing, according to reports, in Shannon. But, I mean, the silence since that incident, 4 days later, there's no major news. None whatever, apart from a local snippet on the radio. What was on board the plane? Why is the silence still going on about it? Where was it going? Now, I've looked it up, and I've been reading everything about it since. Some reports say it's Qatar. Other reports say it's Bahrain.
Well, you're saying this happened on March 28th. Today is April the 1st. And why have you not heard about it?
That's right. Is there anybody going to answer questions about it?
Well, what's your theory then?
My theory, and I'm fairly, we kind of know what's going on in Shannon, really. The Shannon is being used for military craft.
Yeah, we know that. We know that's open. Yes, that's open. The planes are being refueled, and the troops are being refueled as well.
Troops is one thing, you send troops through Shannon. It's a passenger aircraft still, When we're talking about military hardware here, what are you really talking about?
Well, what are you really, Sharon? What are you really talking about? I'm not saying.
Yeah. I'm asking questions, Joe. I mean, we're entitled. We're citizens of a country that's supposed to be neutral. We're supposed to be observing the Hague Convention. What's going on? There's a military. Shannon is not designated for military use at all. Baldonnel is. So why don't they take planes like this up to Baldonnel?
Okay, Barry, stay there. Barry is on the line. Barry's a retained firefighter in Ennis. Barry, good afternoon.
How are things, Joe?
Were you called out to this on Friday night?
We were actually at an incident already, and then we got that call as well. So we'd have a fast turnout to us because we'd say we were already at an incident. We didn't actually get paged from our houses or wherever a retained firefighter would be.
So what time were you called at? Were you alerted at?
I suppose whatever time it comes into control, then we're immediately mobilised because we'd have to be with.
And what time were you mobilised at?
I don't know exactly the exact time, Joe.
Around was it 10:30, 11:30, 12:30?
I suppose about 10:30, Joe. Thereabouts. Yeah.
And you said you were out fighting another fire.
Well, it was a 3-in-1 that instant. We were at a domestic fire, and then we got a shed fire, and then we were mobilised to that call. But we wouldn't actually attend Shannon Airport at all. We go halfway to it. We say as far as the clear in. And that's our rendezvous point in case something happens.
Oh yeah. So you were mobilised for Shannon. So it was a genuine event.
It is, of course. We get several of those for Annam as well. But I'm not saying that they're all fires, but they're aircraft emergencies.
Yeah.
There could be some fault on an airline or on an aircraft, like a faulty bulb that is saying that there's a fire. So they immediately declare it an emergency.
So you were called out on Friday night.
Yes.
And when were you stood down?
When the aircraft has landed safely.
And did you see it? Did you see it landing?
No.
Okay.
So our rendezvous point is a clear in, and then when we do that, then Ennis still has its cover as well.
Oh, I know what you mean. You can be called back to Ennis.
Exactly, yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, okay. Are you called out often for Shannon incidents?
I suppose we get maybe 15 per year, and very rarely we get down there. So it's very rarely we're actually required to go the whole distance.
Okay, well, thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, thank God, it's right.
Okay, but you were called out on Friday night.
We were, yeah.
Okay, you didn't leave the other fire, did you, to head to Shannon?
We had that done.
Yeah,
we had to complete it, it was fine.
Okay, Barry, God bless the work. That's Barry Walsh. He's a
Joe.
retained firefighter and in Ennis. Edward Horgan is on the line. Edward, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Joe.
Well known, you've commented, Edward Horgan, you were in the army, but you're a well known campaigner.
That's right.
Against the use of Shannon for any military activity, and
Sure.
you've been arrested on a number of times in the boat and what have you. Now, do you have a theory about this incident?
Yes, and I suppose also the practice. I also would have serious safety considerations, in fact. I believe it was coming from the United States to Gander and Newfoundland, refueling at Shannon, going on to Cologne, and then going on to the Middle East, either Bahrain or Qatar, supplying the US military, possibly with explosives. The big problem here, Joe, is that apart from issues of neutrality in the Hague Convention, is that Shannon Airport is completely unsuitable for military aircraft carrying explosives in case they crash and go on fire. If a plane with explosives goes on fire at Shannon Airport, it will effectively demolish the complete terminal building. It's a huge risk. Military airfields are designed to take a military aircraft crashing. They have blast walls, and the buildings are specially protected. Shannon Airport is wide open. As your previous speaker said, it's one thing for troops passing through.
What did you come back, Edward? Did you see this plane?
I've seen it on the ground. I didn't see it coming in, but I've heard the reports from the people in Askeaton.
Yes, it's pretty clear now to us looking at the screen that there was flames coming out of it, and it did make an emergency landing at around 10:30 on Friday night.
Correct.
I say that's beyond doubt at this stage.
And very clearly, it shouldn't have dumped fuel over Askeaton. It has the whole Atlantic, in fact, to dump fuel, and that should be the standard procedure. It is highly irresponsible to dump fuel low over the houses in Askeaton.
Well, where did the fuel land, or is it burnt off?
No, well, probably a combination of the raw fuel, in some cases, probably did land on the ground, on the houses, on the farmland, and some of it obviously burned off also. The explosions and the rumbling that was heard was probably fuel air explosions as the fuel was burning. So, in fact, it's highly irresponsible. But the big danger, in fact, is with this and other planes landing at Shannon Airport, carrying explosives, which you know has happened in the past. If such a plane has an emergency and goes on fire...
How do you know there have been planes who've gone through Shannon before with carrying explosives?
Because this has been confirmed. Attack helicopters going to Israel, and we know that particular airlines, including Murray Airlines and Evergreen Airlines, are taking explosives and military hardware to Iraq, Afghanistan and the Middle East.
Okay, stay there. Well, if it had just taken off from Shannon after refuelling, it would have been fairly heavily laden with fuel, wouldn't it? Sarah Boland, 1857-15815. You're in Shannon. You thought the plane was on fire.
Yeah, no, I saw the plane. The plane I saw, it looked as if it was flying towards Shannon.
Mm-hmm. And was it on fire?
Unless I've got my direction wrong, but I saw a plane flying towards the left of my house.
Mm-hmm. I think it was coming into Shannon.
It was on fire. Because I called my son, and I just said to my son, I said, come and see this plane, Kieran, it's on fire. And the plane was on fire. And but it didn't, you see, I cannot hear the planes, even though they're quite near where my house is. I see a lot of planes going in, but if I don't see the plane, I never know there's a plane there because I can't hear them.
And you say it was just landing, it looked like normally in Shannon.
It looked like it was just a normal...
Apart from flames coming out of it.
A normal landing, except there was a massive big flame on the plane. And I called my son over and I said, Kieran, do you want to see this plane? It's on fire, it's going to crash. And he was a bit slow because he doesn't get excited about things like this. And he didn't, he just got to the window as the plane was just disappearing.
But Sarah, you look at that awful tragedy in Biggin Hill on Sunday afternoon, where a plane crashed into a house.
Yeah.
And 6 people
It wouldn't have been near me now, but it could have landed. I mean, we have high-rise flats as well in Shannon. You know, if it landed on a massive big... On one of them high-rise, we have 3-story blocks.
So did the pilot do well then to land it safely, in fairness?
I didn't see him because he just disappeared over the roof of my neighbour's house then. That was all I could see. My view was just...
Edward, would you reserve any praise for the pilot?
No, in fact, because clearly he was coming across the Atlantic. He had thousands of miles to dump the fuel over the Atlantic. He was highly irresponsible to dump it over Askeaton.
How do you know he hadn't just taken off after refuelling?
My information is, in fact, that he was coming in from Gander in Newfoundland, and he was on his way in, not taking off.
Jerry, 51551 text. Jerry, you used to work in Dublin Airport.
I did indeed, Joe. Yeah, I was a flight dispatch officer there for a couple of years, and I can explain essentially what happened there. The aircraft, just what people's minds at ease, an aircraft will never ever, according to, in line with, to comply with air law, will never ever land at an aerodrome if it is above its max landing weight. The aircraft took off in Shannon. It was laden with fuel. It can no way land at any field unless it dumps fuel. Otherwise, if the aircraft did land, there would be a major explosion. The whole aircraft would blow up with fuel. So So the policy is to dump fuel, and it was dumped out away from residential areas. That's air law. You cannot dump fuel.
And in Dublin Airport, if I had to dump fuel coming into Dublin Airport, where would I dump it?
You would go out into the holding area, which is out past Hoth. There's a holding area there also in Killiney, and you would dump fuel out in the sea.
In the sea, okay.
You do not dump fuel over a residential area. That is ridiculous.
And when you say, Jerry, dumping fuel, do you mean is it physically dumped or is it set on fire as it exits the aircraft?
Well, essentially, it's dumping fuel when the aircraft dumps fuel. An engineer now would know more about it than I would know. I was primarily involved with the weight and balance of the aircraft, but from my knowledge, when the aircraft dumps fuel, you will see a flame. This is because it's mixing with the evaporator with the air, and it therefore looks like a flame, like the engine's actually going on fire. It's not. It's just the procedure of the aircraft burning fuel. When it mixes with the air, with the cold air, it ignites into a ball of flame, but it's nothing to be worried about.
And what happens to fuel? Just in your case, you say it lands in the sea off Dublin if it has to be dumped. But if it lands on terra firma, it's just on a field. Is it like diesel or paraffin or whatever?
Yeah, it's just fuel burning into the atmosphere.
But can fuel actually land on the ground? Can it be deposited on the ground?
Well, that would never happen. Air law doesn't allow that to happen. It has to be done over the sea.
Okay, the sea.
Yeah, when I saw the flame, it was over houses.
It was over houses.
Yeah, because I live in Shannon. I live about 3 miles from the airport.
Right. Well,
and the plane was obviously between my house and the airport because I assumed it was going to Shannon Airport.
But Jerome, you've no reports of anyone saying they found fuel on their house or in their land.
The Irish Aviation Authority, Joe, would be that airline would be in serious breach of about 4 regulations there. They cannot dump fuel over residential areas. It's highly dangerous, and air law does not allow it itself. There's a whole law when it comes to aviation. People might know this. There's a whole law. Like I studied it, and one of those laws that you cannot dump fuel under no circumstances in a residential area. And when an aircraft departs, it's called an STAR, an SID, a standard instrumental departure, which is like when an aircraft takes off. Like for example, most aircraft take off from Dublin on a Liffey to Alpha departure, which means the aircraft veers towards the sea, no matter what, before it goes on its intended route. Just in the event of an emergency, that the aircraft will always go towards the sea and never towards a residential area. And that's their law.
That's interesting. Excuse me, Michael.
Yes, Joe.
You said you left your house when you saw you were so worried about the incident.
I just walked out. It's the sound that I didn't know whether it was thunder or a plane at the time because of the crackling sound more than the usual sound.
And what's you say you're surprised you're only hearing about nationally now, but what's your theory then? Because it looks like it was a major incident.
Yes.
Thankfully, nobody was hurt or injured.
Yeah, it had been the talk of the place for the past few days, and nothing has reached national headlines. So a lot of people just concerned as to what went on. That it wasn't reported or media. No one got hold of it.
Yeah, but it was a cargo plane apparently.
Well, yeah, all we had was the day after, just a little bit on our local radio, that it had been on its way to Cologne. So that's the only information we got, and that was the only time it was mentioned on the national or on the local radio.
Okay. Well, Tracy Bell is on the line. Tracy, good afternoon.
Good afternoon. How are you?
Tracy is Director of Administration at Murray Air, Tracy, which was the carrier. The air you own the aircraft.
We are the carrier. We lease the aircraft, yes.
And thank God nobody was hurt or injured, Tracy.
Everybody was fine. This was a pretty standard maintenance issue, and the pilot handled it according to our operations specifications and returned to the airport safely.
So what happened, Tracy?
This was a compressor failure in one of our engines, a compressor stall. Mm-hmm. And when the compressor stalls, the thing that alarms people on the ground is that it does do a flame out, what we call a flame out.
But why not dump the fuel over the sea where there was plenty of scope to do that?
Okay,
excuse me. There is absolutely no fuel was dumped from that aircraft. The pilot did not have time to do so. He turned the aircraft around and returned to the airport immediately. There was
the
no...
aircraft
Edward, hang on a second. I have to let Tracy speak now, in fairness. Tracy, the plane had left Shannon, is that correct?
The plane
took
had
off
left
from Shannon.
took off from Shannon with a full load of fuel.
Okay, and what happened next?
And there was a compressor stall. The engine just stalled on one of the engines. There are 4 engines on this aircraft.
It was a DC-8.
It was a DC-8. One of the engines stalled, and when that happens, there is what we call a flame out.
Okay.
And I have my director of safety here, Mike Bodo, and he's here to assist me with the technical language of a flame out.
Okay.
Okay,
so that accounts for the flames.
That accounts for the flames.
And did the plane fly low? So did it have to?
It did not dump fuel. I want to make that clear to your listeners.
You're adamant about that. It did not dump fuel over Irish land or sea.
Correct. That is correct.
The pilot then successfully managed to turn the plane around and head back to Shannon.
Correct.
And an emergency was declared.
That's correct.
Were there explosives on board?
No. There were no explosives on board the aircraft.
What was on board?
These were commodities, and that will remain confidential.
Commodities, military commodities?
That will remain confidential.
Why?
It's between us and our customer.
Why?
Who's your customer, Tracy?
We cannot declare that at this time. That's confidential.
The U.S. military is your customer?
We cannot declare that at this time.
U.S. military is one of your customers, correct?
U.S. military is one of our customers. We cannot declare that was our customer on this particular flight.
Why not?
Those are my instructions.
And are you licensed to carry, you say not in this case, it wasn't the issue in this case, but are you licensed to carry explosives for one of your clients, which is the U.S. military?
We do have hazmat insurance, correct.
So you are licensed to carry explosives. Have you carried them before through Shannon?
No, not to my knowledge.
Would you know if you had?
I might not.
Where was the plane heading to?
The plane's destination is Doha.
And did it stop? Was it due to stop anywhere in between?
No.
And Doha is commonly used by the U.S. Air Force and U.S. military?
Yes, it is.
So it's fair to say it was carrying U.S. military commodities?
It is not fair to say.
And that would not have been sandwiches?
Correct.
It would have been guns and probably ammunition and probably explosives?
I cannot confirm or deny that.
How many crew were on the plane, Tracy?
3 crew members.
And that's
and 1 ride-on mechanic.
And that was the total number of personnel on the flight. There was no other personnel.
Correct.
Okay. And was it fully laden?
As far as I know, I don't have the specs on the freight at this point in time.
But do you think it's hardly flying empty?
It was not flying empty, obviously.
Did it have a full load of fuel when it took off from Shannon?
It did.
Because it just refueled. And there was no need for it to dump fuel, you say?
There was no time to dump fuel.
It was such a serious emergency.
Yes.
In fact,
any time you have an emergency situation, according to our operation specifications, the pilot is instructed to turn the aircraft around and land immediately, which he did, and safely.
That makes it even more dangerous, Joe. With a full load of fuel, landing at Shannon Airport with possible explosives on board, it could have demolished the whole terminal building.
Well, you're making some pretty dire assumptions.
Of course.
The landing was quite safe, and it was according to our specs.
But
we are cooperating fully with the Irish and our NTSB.
Is in fairness, Tracy, do the Irish people not deserve to know or be given some idea, given that it was such a serious event last Friday night, do they not deserve to know what was on the plane?
There were no explosives on board the aircraft. That I can tell you.
You already said you don't know.
Were there any armaments?
There were no armaments on the aircraft.
What was on it, Tracy?
Pardon me?
What was on it?
I am not going to declare that. We have a confidentiality arrangement with our clientele.
But you just told us there was no explosives, even though you don't know what was on it.
I am telling you there were no explosives on the plane.
How do you know?
Well, I would know.
How?
But I'm not going to declare it to you.
You do know what was on the plane?
Certainly.
You do know who...
Were there weapons on the plane?
I have already answered that question.
You haven't, no. Were there weapons on the plane?
I have moved... Let's move along. I've answered that question.
Let's move back. Were there weapons on the plane?
I said no.
You said no weapons on the plane?
Correct.
What were they taking from the States to Doha for the U.S. military if it wasn't weapons?
I have nothing to declare. I'll remain mute on that subject.
Okay, stay there. Tracy Bell is Director of Administration with Murray Air. Jurgen, how many flights a week do you have in and out of Shannon normally, Tracy? Is it one of your busiest? Is Shannon a big port of call for you?
We come into Shannon, I would probably estimate 6 times per year.
Okay, are you happy the way you're treated at Shannon?
Very much so.
Oh, that's good.
Very friendly.
Jurgen White is Air Accident Investigation Unit at the Department of Transport in Kildare Street in Dublin with the Irish Government. Tracy, go ahead, Jurgen.
Hey, good afternoon, Joe. How are you?
Good.
Hi, Jorgen. How are you?
How are you?
You've been speaking already.
No, not directly.
Okay.
But I have been listening to your program, and I would just like to confirm that the Air Accident Investigation Unit of the Department of Transport was immediately notified of this incident, as is the norm with Shannon Air Traffic Control. And we have an inspector on it. We've interviewed a pilot, and we have sought certain details, including a maintenance report and the manifest. So we will be conducting an investigation. The basic details are that this 4-engine DC-8 cargo aircraft took off from Shannon. As rightly said by your last contributor, the aircraft suffered a compressor stall. Now, this basically means that there's a restriction of airflow going through the engine. And the engine basically backfires, and you will hear loud clapping thunder type
So
sound.
that accounts for the noise our listeners heard.
Indeed. And during this compressor stall, you can have an increase of fuel flow to the engine, and then you have flames and sparks coming out of the rear of the engine. Now, I can confirm that the aircraft made an emergency landing at Shannon, which would be the norm. He landed with all 4 engines. And he did an overweight landing, which means that he did not jettison fuel, and did an overweight landing, which again would be the norm to ensure that the aircraft is brought safely to the ground.
Can you confirm what the aircraft was carrying?
I am waiting for the manifest, as would be the norm, and we will identify what was on board when we receive the manifest.
So you don't know what was in it yet. Tracy, are you licensed to? Does your hazmat license allow you to land in Shannon?
It does, of course.
So Murray Air could, I'm not saying you did, but Murray Air could, through your client, one of your clients, it happens to be the American Air Force, the American Army / Air Force, Murray Air could carry explosives through Shannon.
I can confirm that, yes, sir.
And have you carried explosives through Shannon?
I believe so, yes, sir.
On its way for the American Army?
Yes, sir.
Do those explosives include depleted uranium ammunition?
That I don't know. I can't confirm that because
Most
I
likely
actually
does.
don't know.
Have you a license to carry depleted uranium ammunition?
We do.
Joe,
of the 6 flights on average, I'm not asking you to be exact, given that
I can't be
you're on the
specific
phone,
on
of
that,
course,
I'm guessing.
and we understand that, Tracy. But that of the flights that have gone through Shannon, you are licensed, you say, to carry armaments and explosives for the American Army through Shannon. Do you know if any of those flights have done so?
Most of those flights, and I would have to say 5 out of the 6 perhaps, carry commodities for the U.S. Automobile industry. They are not related to military carriage.
But have Murray airplanes carrying explosives landed at Shannon?
I don't know.
You are licensed to do so?
We are licensed to do so. I do not have that advice at this time.
But you do carry explosives for the American Air Force?
We are licensed to carry explosives.
And you are allowed land in Shannon?
Correct.
Including depleted uranium?
Yes, we are licensed for that.
I'm sure the people of Shannon Town will be very pleased to hear that.
Why would I be very pleased to hear that, Edward?
I'm clearly implying otherwise. Depleted uranium has caused thousands of deaths in Iraq years after it was used. If a plane at Shannon Airport had an accident resulting in depleted uranium being released, Shannon Town would be affected for years to come. This is appalling information.
But surely this is not new information.
Yes, it's the first time we've heard the likelihood of depleted uranium going to Shannon Airport. We suspected it. This is the first time we've had it nearly confirmed.
It is not even close to nearly confirmed.
I think it is, Tracy.
Not at all. They're asking about uranium. You're being an alarmist, and that's just idiotic at this standpoint.
I'm not being an alarmist. I'm a former military officer. I know what ammunition is. I know what explosives are. I know what can happen when a plane goes on fire with explosives on board.
You see, the fact that I presume you need specific permission from the Irish authorities to land such material, even for a temporary, even for an hour or two for refueling. Tracy, you need specific permission from the Irish authorities.
We are fully compliant
That's what
with
I'm
the
saying.
Irish authorities and with.
So you would only seek permission, given that you're a commercial airline. You would only seek permission if you were going to use it.
That is correct.
The problem is, Joe, that the Irish authorities...
So can we surmise then, or will you stop me? Can we surmise that you have used your licence in Ireland?
Can you surmise that we have used our license in Ireland? No, you cannot surmise that. We are fully hazmat compliant.
Yeah, but you said you have specific permission to land such material in Ireland, and I'm saying you would only seek such permission if you intended to use it. I thought you concurred with that statement.
It's an insurance-based license. We are insured to do so. We are therefore licensed to do so. That does not necessarily imply that we have used the license to transport uranium. Where are you going with this?
To Iraq, to the Iraq war, killing people. That's where we're going.
Well, I can assure you that we're in complete compliance with both the Irish authorities and the U.S. authorities in whatever our transport.
That doesn't make it right, and it doesn't mean the Irish authorities are compliant with health and safety regulations. Shannon Airport is not designed to take military aircraft loaded with explosives, in my view.
Well, we are fully compliant. We are fully cooperating with the Irish authorities. The manifests will come out, and you will have the information you need. I think this interview is at an end.
Okay, but Tracy, just before you go, in fairness, now you have been very clear, and I appreciate that, and very forthcoming, and I appreciate that. But why not simply tell us what was on the plane? You say it's going to come out anyway. Was it food? Was it clothes? Was it hamburgers? Was it Coca-Cola? Was it? What was it, Tracy?
The incident is under investigation. The manifest will come out after the investigation is complete.
But you're saying there's nothing to worry about what was on the plane.
And I think that your prior caller indicated that when the manifest, when the incident has been fully... Jorgen, when the incident has been fully investigated, you will have all that information.
But why not just tell us what was on the plane?
I am not at liberty to do so at this time.
And who would make you demur?
Excuse me?
Who would stop you? Who's stopping you from telling us it was Coca-Cola?
This is an incident under investigation, and I can tell you right now it was not Coca-Cola. I think this interview is at an end. Thank you so much, gentlemen.
Okay, Tracy, thanks for your time. Jorgen.
Yes, Joe, go ahead.
I appreciate Tracy's time there, and it's the first time we've had such a forthright interview with Morier in terms of what they do in Shannon, and she was very forthcoming up to that point. Did you ask anybody what was on the plane?
Well, Joe, primarily our job here is to investigate accidents, serious incidents and incidents. And while there is concern vis-a-vis what happened in Askeaton, this is classified by us as an incident. We know what has happened, and I'm purely interested in the technical aspects of this particular event. We know what happened. We know the aircraft suffered from a compressor stall, which is probably associated with a build-up of ice at the intake of the engine. All engines were...
and it was a serious incident in that they didn't have time to dump fuel and they had to land.
Again, what they have to do is they have to provide a precautionary approach to this. He had a problem with his engine.
Okay. I take all that on board, Jorgen.
And he landed safely. That's a priority.
Okay, absolutely. That's taken in full. But did anybody ask, just out of curiosity, by the way, what was on the plane?
Well, again, we deal in fact, Joe, we don't speculate, and we have a whole sequence of events of how we investigate this. We have already interviewed the pilot. We have asked the operator for maintenance records, and... Do you know at this stage what was on the plane? I don't know, to be honest with you. I wouldn't know. And in fact...
Why wouldn't they tell us?
Well, it's an issue to other people. I mean, obviously, if the airplane had crashed and there were issues associated with that, it would be very important that we know what's on. But the cargo, as it stands, is not an issue specific to the technical investigation that we have. However, we will, in the course of events, receive a copy of the manifest, and that will identify what was on board. And that will be developed in the report.
Okay, and you're happy with the cooperation so far from Morier?
So far, yes.
Okay. Have they been involved in any incidents before?
We haven't, I recall, we've been in operation since 94, 95, and I don't recall specific having to investigate anything associated with Murray Air.
Okay. Thanks, Neil. That's Jurgen White. Thanks for contacting us. Is Ed Horgan just there finally?
Yeah, speaking. Yeah.
What was new then, in your view, and what Tracy Bell revealed here a few minutes ago of Murray Air?
Well, clearly we now know with certainty it was being used to transport goods for the US military. It was going to Doha, which is a US being used as a US military base. The plane is licensed to carry depleted uranium, and even the possibility that it might.
No, she's adamant that in this case, she won't tell us about anything else, but she's adamant in this case it was not carrying depleted uranium or weapons.
Well, first of all, she wouldn't know. I think it's highly unlikely and probably untrue that it wasn't carrying weapons. Highly unlikely.
But in fairness, Tracy Bell of Murray Air did admit that they have a licence to carry weapons through Ireland.
Correct, yeah.
And armaments.
It means, very importantly, that depleted uranium, weapons and armaments have passed through Shannon Airport, most likely in the past, and could have been involved in similar incidents. And apart altogether from our neutrality, the Hague Convention or whatever, the danger to the people working in Shannon Airport is massive. Shannon Airport in particular is one wall of glass facing on to the runways and facing on to the parking area.
Okay. Well, then there's a lot more. I know people were ringing us saying they've heard nothing about it, but now they have. And I really do genuinely appreciate those three women, in fact, Catherine, Grace and Sharon, who contacted us this morning to ask us what was going on. Okay, back after this break.
Talk to Joe on 1850 715